that's relevant right now, but this conversation is really just going to come back to some really core OPEX principles that don't change, regardless of the current pandemic or, in 6 months from now, when hopefully everything is back to some kind of normal. So Carl, any points that you would like to start with today?
No, I would love to make this more of an ongoing discussion throughout the 60 minutes or however long we're on, instead of lecture and then questions at the end, just because I want to, as we go through this, I want to talk about what the health continuum is and what we propose the health continuum to be, have some good conversation around that to lay some groundwork, and then get into some specific pieces based on the situation that our coaches are finding themselves in, or coaches in general are finding themselves in today with the landscape of the virus and all of that, and how we can tangibly start to implement things inside of our principles with our clients today.
Sounds great, Carl. So I'll let you lead off then. And maybe the first great thing to start with would be a definition of what the health continuum actually is.
Yeah, definitely. If you want to hit the slide to the next slide, Georgia. Yeah, so this is what we propose to be the health continuum. So when you look at this, the idea is to understand that health, wellness, vitality, and elite fitness, or based on today's conversation, we'll call it performance. They're two different things, right? So a lot of times, especially, I think we bring up, 5-6 years ago, those things were confused, where it's like, if your Fran time was really good, that means that you're healthy, right? So what we're proposing is that elite fitness is actually on the opposite side of vitality and wellness, right? And you can see that it's actually closer to sickness and death than it is vitality and wellness. So just to wrap our heads around, a really good Fran time doesn't mean that under the hood everything is operating to its fullest capacity relative to vitality and wellness.
Thanks for that, Carl. And maybe you could hit on some indicators of what sickness means, what elite fitness means, and then what vitality means on the other side.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, just I love seeing this picture when James is on the call, because he always he always brings up what this picture looks like. I'll leave it there. So yeah, when we look at,
the intentions were from a good starting point. I was made aware of this after the fact. So as soon as I posted it or proposed it, I had 30 direct messages be like, "Hey man," and I was like, "Oh shit." So
yeah, good point. You'll never forget. Yeah, definitely. I think the reason why this conversation is very timely to the situation that we find ourselves in today is that now we have to look at what matters, right? So what is being proposed as the answer right now across the landscape? And I think James mentioned it on Thursday or Friday, but it's people, getting enough blood flow. It's people getting enough sleep. It's people focusing on, what's happening under the hood as far as, immune function, right? And when we start to look at elite fitness, Georgia, and what are great indicators of elite fitness, right, for our coaches that have taken mixed modal, right, look at those things as great indicators, or KPIs as elite fitness. It's like, what is your score? What is your time? How much weight do you lift? All of those things. But there's no correlative to those things and vitality and wellness, right? So we look at, if we start to picture, like, let's say we have a male and female, a photo, right? And we want to identify who's healthy or what picture is healthy. If we had a slideshow and we started to go down the line and those males and females got leaner and their abs stuck out a little bit more, a lot of coaches and a lot of people would start to say, okay, they're getting healthier, they're getting healthier, they're getting healthier. In reality, right, and this is just specific to body composition, in reality, being extremely lean as a male or a female is actually going to the right side of this continuum that's proposed here. And we see it, right? We see it in, let's look at body composition at its highest levels in bodybuilding, right? Anyone that's ever been as a male sub 7-6% body fat and a female sub 12, 11, 10%, if you don't feel great, right? Women lose their periods. Males drop testosterone greatly, things like that, right? So that's just an example relative to the body composition side, where as we get better, quote unquote, we actually get more unhealthy under the hood. So I don't want to propose that we all go out and get our blood checked, but when we have a checkup with our doctors, right, and we look at, hormonal markers and we start to see testosterone in the shitter, and we start to see progesterone all over the place and women missing periods, it's like that should turn on a light bulb where we're like, okay, I feel okay. I'm performing really well, but am I actually healthy? Right? And I mentioned the timeliness of this thing right now, because when we look at, immunal function and all of that, it's like when we start to click to the right on that PowerPoint and getting leaner, it's like those immune systems are probably compromised, right? When we start to click to the left and we get to, let's call it like an average looking person with a requisite amount of body fat, whatever that means for them. And we start to compare that to hormonal function and how they feel and how they sleep and all of that. We will most likely see better quote unquote results or better numbers as we are on that fatter side, right? And I'm not saying like, we all want to be 20, 30, 40% body fat. I'm just saying that there's a happy median in which we want to be. And if we get too far to that right side, we're actually compromising more things than just our health, right? We may be compromising our longevity and whatever that longevity piece may be.
Great. Thanks for getting specific there, Carl. There is an interesting question here from Austin, and it is about whether if someone is in elite fitness, should you be rebalancing them to get healthy? And I'd invite, either Carl or James to answer that. Can you have both?
James, do you mind if I start on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it depends, right? Like, and I'm going to take that question as we're coaching that person, right? And they've prioritized, performance and winning for, X amount of time when you're coaching them. And now this thing happens, should we shift and focus on their health and fitness? The first thing I would do is have a conversation with that person, right? Because if we have clients and they come to us and they say, hey, I'm hiring you to get better at this sport, or I'm hiring you because I want to get better at fitness. It's like we can have conversations on what that means and we can tell them the ramifications of what that's going to be. But if they turn around and they tell us like, I don't give a shit, like I just want to get better, right? I want my 1RMs to go up. I want to be faster. I want to do this and that. It's like they hired us as their coach, right? So we can't put our biases on our clients 100% of the time. Right. So I just say it depends, because it depends on what the client wants and where that client wants to go. And now when we look at, looking at the landscape, and let's say we have high performing athletes that now don't have the access to the resources of what they need to continue to get better. Right. Look at like, imagine if we had a pitcher in baseball and we told that pitcher that they can't throw a baseball for 2 months. Are they actually going to be a better pitcher by doing scap exercises and bicep curls? Probably not, right? So that's a real conversation that we would have with that pitcher. So if we have someone that's prioritizing performance and now they don't have the resources to actually, cause adaptation to get better at whatever sport that they participate in, it's like, we're taking away your baseball. You may not get better at this thing, but there's other things that we can prioritize because of the lack of resources that we have right now. So I say all that to say it depends on what the client wants and what the client needs and what resources you have right now. Sorry, James, go ahead.
No, I have nothing to add to that. There's just so many angles we could go at it. I'm not sure what of course I came on late to the call too, so I don't want to stop it from moving forward for what you want. Is this what the whole call is about today?
We're talking about health versus performance.
Okay, yeah. Well, I think it's you just got to define health, and you have to define athleticism. And it doesn't make anyone right or wrong. But if you define health as running around when you're 85 and feeling some form of libido and being able to function really well, I can't argue till I'm blue in the face on here to show you the difference between what what an NFL football player is doing when they're 62, right? So, and if you're a commentator, like, well, not everyone's a football player. It's like, okay, well, what's the spectrum of athleticism that you want to have this conversation on? So if you're an elite walker, yeah, okay, maybe you got me, maybe there's something, but you know what I'm saying? So, and as far as it moves over to like maximal physical expression, I think we have to define that. And remember, when people do sport, and this is to be fair to athleticism pursuit. To be fair to athleticism pursuit, they don't do it. If you say that they do it to be healthier, you've never been an athlete, you've never coached athletes. That's fact. Because when athletes do it, they want to crush shit. They want to test themselves cognitively and physically to their maximum potential. And it is unfair to say that athletes do that for health. It is simply unfair. And so I think to argue back and forth on health versus performance and connecting the two of them, I think it gets to a moot, drawn out argument of just different beliefs. But I think people can come to their own conclusions by saying, well, what do you define as health? And then if someone wants to discuss that, like I have been doing on the chat, I'll talk ad nauseum for 6 hours on everything that we've seen in managing and assessing athletes, and then managing and assessing healthy people. And guess what two groups look the same? Sick people and athletes. They look the same. It's the same Dutch test. It's the same food aversions. It's the same A1C. It's the same cognitive dysfunction issues. It's all the same. Can one person look ripped though and do 1,000 thrusters in 22 minutes? Yeah, it does. But it depends upon what your definition is of that. And I'll stop there.
Just to clarify quickly on Austin's point there, he's asking the difference between athletes and elite fitness. And I would say in the context of this discussion, for elite fitness, we're always talking about being elite with a sport. Is that fair to say, James?
Yeah, so I tried to put it on a continuum, but again, even to get into that conversation, you try to get nuanced, right? It's like, because I'm sure I could look at Louise Burke's research on elite walkers that did cyclical ketogenic diets versus high carb diets and go, well, what's the health of the elite walkers? Do you know my point? It all comes back to intention if you wanted to put two buckets, right? So reductionist thought always gets you there. It'll always get you to the point where it's like, you can't reduce it down to two different things, but we have to in order to have this conversation. So I'm putting all athletes over there who have the intention, which I don't give a shit what it looks like, even if it's shooting guns. Your intention is pleasure, point, prizes, and pain. That's the intentions. And so if we recognize that's the intention, it is unfair. It's unfair to have the conversation, well, what are the things we can pull out over there that are for health, right? I think it's just an unfair conversation. And let me just posit this theory, which is why I think it is the reason Nike started it with everyone, right? And everyone wants to jump on board of you can be the athlete thing too. Remember why that narrative is so important. Why is it so important? It sells shit, right? You can consume and purchase shit, right? Why do you think everyone in the fitness industry is dying to call their clients athletes? Because they know that pulls the client's psyche into being something more than what they are. It doesn't make it right. So let's just remember why we're trying to wrap everything around the athlete concept, right? It's because, it's just pretty damn hard to tell someone, you know what? You don't have to be an athlete. You're just Johnny. And why not just be Johnny and the best Johnny you can be for the rest of your life and be healthy? That's hard to sell. So let's understand how we got to this point of the discussion between athleticism and the definition. As a long-winded answer to your question, Georgia, on as soon as you enter into this like nuanced area, what is athleticism and what is health, it just gets, I'll just be honest, it gets moot.
Well, we'll move on from there then, and I'll pass it back to Carl to take us from the health continuum and, what coaches should do with that framework.
Yeah, I think it's going to be because I think the conversation that we're having is a good one, right? It's like there's some challenging questions, and I don't think that there's a perfect answer, right? I know in the chat box there's a lot of back and forth on, what is the difference between elite athleticism, elite fitness, an elite athlete, right? But relative to this conversation, we're talking about fitness, right? We're talking about fitness. We're not talking about I saw, CrossFit mentality in there. We're not talking about CrossFit, right? Like, we're talking about physiological adaptations to continue to get better, right? So that can mean a multitude of things. And when we look at physiology, and let's just say, pushing aerobic capacity, that's one aspect of this thing, right? But, even if I'm a competitive golfer, right, and my only goal in life is to be the best golfer in the world, think about the other stressors, right? The psychological stress that causes, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that that's what that person is prioritizing, and that's what their aim is. Their aim is to be the best in the world. Even if we were to look at executives, right? Let's take away exercise and athleticism. Let's look at executives want to be the best. They want their companies to be, one of the best, most successful companies in the world. It's like those people are deprioritizing things that move them closer to the health and wellness and vitality side of this thing, and they're losing sleep, right? They're stressed out all day, right? There's things that are moving them closer to sickness. So look at this continuum, take away elite fitness and put in, I want to be the best in the world at this one thing. And we can have a conversation on how that's going to move us toward that sickness aspect. And that's not saying that there's one-offs, that, there's extremely successful executives that have this great quote unquote balance in life, and they spend 8 hours a day at work and they spend 8 hours a day at home with their families, and it's a beautiful world. But that's not the norm, right? Anyone that's pushing one thing and they're pushing their life quote unquote out of balance is seeing this shift to the right side of this continuum. I think for today's conversation, it's just relevant to talk about health versus performance relative to fitness, right? Because we're fitness coaches on this call, and we're coaching our clients in exercise, right? There's other aspects to that, like lifestyle and nutrition and all of that. But if our intentions are to be the best exerciser in the world, whatever that means, whether you're a CrossFitter, whether you're a golfer, whether you're a football player, whatever that is, we're likely moving further to the right side of this continuum because we're deprioritizing other things.
So Faisal's just popped a question in here, and it was to all panelists, so I'll read it out so the attendees can hear it too, but I think it's a great jumping point from what we have just discussed. He says, how do we stay in the health zone? As I see, it's easy to get sucked into the performance zone without feeling it and still think you're in for health. So what should health intention in exercise look like?
Yeah, so I assume that we're coaching our clients, and we're trying to connect our clients with what health versus performance looks like. Would we agree? That's what we're saying here?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I think it's going back. Okay, cool. Thanks, Faisal. Yeah, it's going back to intentions, right? And having conversations with our clients, or doing a self-assessment if it's on ourselves, with what are our intentions? What is the outcome that we're trying to get from this whole thing, right? What's the outcome that I'm trying to get from, going to the gym and doing this exercise or that exercise? If the intention is to, I'll go back to what James mentioned at the beginning of the call, is to, walk up a mountain at 85 years old. It's like, is doing insert exercise A here, is doing this exercise getting me closer to my intention? If the answer is no, just don't do it, right? If the answer is no, but I feel like doing this today, it's like, cool, do it, but understand that it's not getting you to your goal, right? So that's what exercise intention is. It's like, what are you doing on a daily basis in fitness that's getting you closer or further away from your goal? Because if you think that something is your goal, and your exercise every single day in the gym is moving you to the other side and further away from that goal, relook at what your intentions are, and if your intentions are actually sound, and if your goal is sound, if that's what you want to do. So if exercise intentions are to be, is to get stronger in the back squat, it's like, what are you doing on a daily basis to get yourself there? So I think it's just looking back at what the intention of that exercise is and what the intention of fitness is. And if we're aligned on the intention, then it's so much easier as a coach to put in the A, B's, and C's in a client's training program, because you're keeping yourself honest, because you're consistently looking at that client's goal.
Thanks for that, Carl.
Yep.
So to continue the conversation, it would be really interesting if you could dig into max physical potential and maybe connecting that to an athlete versus a health client to help us all understand how this could play out over a lifetime.
Yeah. James, I don't know if you want to add to this, but I'm just going to.
I was hoping maybe you could bring up the assets of the, just look at Whiteboard Daily's asset. They took our asset and put it into just quickly get it on Instagram and pull it up. But I think it's an important graph that you should look at as a posit, right? I mean, you got to think about this. Maximum physical potential means like, what does every human have potential for in expressing? And you have to believe that everyone has a human maximum potential. And you have to recognize that athletes in this conversation strive towards what is higher than what they're capable of, because that's the goal, right? That's the beautiful conversation in times of athletic pursuit, right? Flow state, meditative, transcendence, etc. It's all mentioned in there. Why? Because you actually have to, quote unquote, leave your body to get a true expression, right? Which is what we honor, which is what we love, which is like what we believe we should be striving for, except when your definition is longevity. So that's why it can't be moved together. So maximum physical potential, you have to look at it in a light of three different areas, like, Whiteboard Daily did. What would it look like inactive? What does longevity look like? And what does athlete look like? And you just want to define what the end is and what you actually are capable of biologically through experience, which whatever modalities you use, and your intentions, you have this certain level of possibility. And I'll just stop there to give some more context or flavor if, Carl, you wish to do so.
No, that was good, James. Yeah, I'm just going to keep bringing it back to who that person is and what your intention is for them in program design or in coaching or in fitness or whatever it is that you're giving your client. Because someone's maximum physical potential it's relative, right? Like, is maximum physical potential, now looking at this graph, is it just extending their life out to the right? Is that their maximum physical potential? Because the conversation that we usually have on maximal physical potential is the purple line, the athlete line. It's like, can I push myself to the limits to get better at this thing, right? And it's like, how is that even relative to someone that is only focused on health, longevity, and vitality? It's like, will they ever reach?
Is that just me?
I got booted.
It
Okay.
just froze for me too.
Oh, you're back, Carl.
Yeah, sorry. Are you guys there?
Yeah.
All right, sorry, I got kicked out. Sorry, all of that I was trying to say that maximum physical potential is relative to who your client is and what they want to do, right? Because if maximum physical potential is all based on that purple line in the athlete, let's call that purple line being something very specific, like a back squat. It's like a longevity client, a health and longevity client will never reach their maximum physical potential because you're not pushing the limits, right? But if their intention is to live a really long time, now you're more focused on that versus their maximum physical potential. And I know James said that in different words, but I think just looking at it like, when do we?
Ooh, one of the glitches in Zoom. Guaranteed it's been happening.
Yeah, that's weird. I'm like plugged in to the wall, so I don't have like Wi-Fi issues or anything.
No, It's definitely a Zoom thing, I would say.
Yeah,
I
I'm
saw our
also
numbers
plugged
went up like
in.
before.
Let's give everyone a second just to get back on and see if we can get this smooth sailing again.
The FBI was listening.
We just got such interesting stuff to say.
They're like, man, they're getting close to figuring this Corona thing out. Get them off.
Okay, I'll be the one to say it because I'm taking heat all the time. It's those damn group coaches coaching their folks at home on their exercise programs. There, I said it. That's the reason why.
It's Momay's fault. Is he back on the call?
You have no business being
that
in
quite
Zoom.
successfully.
Stop using our platform.
Gotta laugh at that, folks. Come on, that was a little bit funny.
We should do like a meme, like been using Zoom since 2015.
Oh. Yeah, that's next month.
I'd buy that T-shirt.
All right, let's go right back to it. I got a minute. I'm speaking to Jakob, one of my coaches in.
Where were we at, guys? We were talking about. I think Carl, you were in a discussion of the athlete versus health line on that graph.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop there because I kept getting cut off. So I think the universe didn't like what I was saying. But yeah, I was essentially agreeing with James on what he said. So yeah, just understand your client's intention and what maximum physical potential means for them, and be okay with your health and longevity clients never actually reaching their maximum physical potential in aerobic threshold training, right? Like little pieces like that.
James, before you have to run, is there anything you'd like to add to the conversation?
No, I just made the point there. It doesn't matter where you sit on it. The conversation is a very healthy one. If anything, if we kept that language or concept or ideas in people's heads top of mind, we've done our job, because it's a very, very, very important conversation for alignment of intentions and what people can do, and et cetera. To Joiner's point, we've been talking about this for a long time, and we will continue to have challenging conversations and debates and ideas around that. I got to go, but I'll be back here if we want to do a repeat of it, or to help coaches navigate their philosophy or their moral fitness concepts over the next little while. So thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, James.
Thanks, James.
Really quick, Georgia, before we get into the Q&A aspect, I just wanted to hit on what's in front of us right now and what we're dealing with, and how this conversation relates to the position that we're all in with our clients. So just some actionable takeaways from the conversation as a whole. Even if we don't have a quote unquote answer, right? I think it's a good conversation to have with our clients right now. And when we look at going back to the resources conversation and the lack of resources that we have in front of us, a lot of coaches and a lot of clients are freaking out because they're like, hey, I had everything at my fingertips. I had this free motion machine. I had barbells with unlimited amounts of weights. I had this, that, and the other. I had rings. I had a rig. I had all these things. And coaches feel like they lost their tools, and now they're not sure which way to go. And when we look at this, health versus performance conversation, and we look at the performance side, today is worse than it was a couple weeks ago, because we don't have those tools at our fingertips for our performing clients, our clients that are really focused on getting better and creating adaptation through those tools that you use in the gym if you needed those, right? So there's, and going back to what we talked about with the baseball player, you take a baseball away from a pitcher for X amount of months, they're not going to be a better pitcher at the end of that. So it is in that conversation with our clients that we coach that are, really focused on performance. It's there. It's like, hey, we're not creating the adaptations, or we're not able to create the adaptations that we were able to create a week ago when we had all of these tools at our fingertips. But maybe there's something else that we can focus on during this time. And I don't want to be a parrot, because I've said that on every one of these calls on looking at the positives and focus somewhere else. and control what we can control and all of that. But that is just reality right now, right? We don't want to lose all of our clients right now because we don't have these tools or they don't have a gym, right? So let's look at the things that we can focus on and have a conversation. And you have a conversation with yourselves as coaches is, how can I use these tools being removed to put me in a better place in 6 months, or to put my clients in a better place in 6 months? And it's focusing more on the behavior stuff. It's focusing more on the nutrition stuff. It's continuing to move, right? Maybe it's focusing on, for your performing clients, maybe it's focusing on, becoming a better runner at this time, right? Because the roads weren't taken away from us unless we get like a shelter in place order and we can't go anywhere. So maybe it's focusing on things that you can actually focus on at this time. But the reality is that they're probably not going to be better at fitness, and they're probably not going to be better at sport at the end of this thing if that's what you were pushing before you came into this. And then on the other side, where most of our clients are, they sit in that health, longevity, vitality bucket. It's like, this doesn't really affect them that much, right? When we start talking about the actual exercise.
What is happening?
I'm just going to pick it right up. Did you guys lose me at program?
I heard exercise was the last word.
Yeah, the actual exercise program. So it's the same conversation with those people, but maybe those people thought that the program design and adaptation and maximum physical potential and all that stuff was so important to them. In reality, it really wasn't, right? It's like we were using all of these tools because they had them, and we were just, we were keeping them entertained with things that we could utilize inside of the gym. But not much is really changing for those people. They're not going to get less fit because now you're doing a bunch of calisthenics and focusing on behavior and nutrition. You just have to shift the focus. And this whole thing, everything that we're going to talk about, especially the next, 3 days after this, because now we're focusing on principles and the exercise program specifically, there's still ways that we can manipulate this thing, and people can come out of this thing in a better place than they came into it, right? Because this time, as coaches especially, when we have access to gyms, we're really going to appreciate having those tools now. And we're actually going to be better coaches because we're going to know how to program for our clients without all those tools that all of us have been so accustomed to, right? We're going to understand how to use relative strength to our advantage, right? We're just going to come out of this in a better place. So when we look at, how you're having conversations with your clients and how you're changing the program, just make sure the intentions are clear. So as we go into OPEX Gain, Pain, and Sustain over the next 3 days, ensure that intentions are really clear on your side, as well as your clients are on the same page that you are on.
So Carl, Fable's just popped a question in the chat box, which I think is a great one. And he asked, is there one question that he and his clients can have in mind when they're trying to decide if what they're doing is supporting health? This could be a really good time to dig into what James talks about a lot with intention, brain, body, and function, or brain, body, and life, and maybe connecting to those three buckets. Could you dig into that a little?
Sorry, what was you wanted me to answer? Is there one question?
Yeah, because I don't know if there is one question that someone could ask, but James will answer this question in a slightly different way by talking about, does exercise serve mental acuity, daily function, and then life in general, living a larger life. And I think those are really good areas for a coach to look at when they're trying to decide, is this program supporting health for my client?
Got it. Yeah. I mean, it all goes back to conversation, doesn't it? But it's even before talking about exercise, what we do as coaches, we talk to our clients and we want to understand what their priorities and values are, right? So it's like, if someone's priorities and values, let's talk about values, right? So just to set the tone, priorities, think of those as like what your clients are doing on a daily basis. It's like, hey, what are you doing from 6 in the morning until 10 at night, right? Like those are their priorities because that's where they're spending their time. Now looking at values, right? If someone values work, right, and becoming, a really high level executive, it's how does this exercise program align with your values? If someone values being the best at fitness, it's like, how does this exercise program align with your values? So it all goes back to the values conversation, even before the goals conversation. right? Because it's like our clients usually, if we've sat down with a client, and we all have, right? And we said, hey, why are you here today? What are your goals? Immediately they're like, I don't know what my goals are. I think I want to lose a little bit of weight. I want to get a little bit stronger. I want to get better at this. I want to get better at that. But we need to help our clients identify what their goals are. And we do that through what their priorities and values are. So I think before we get to the exercise program specifically, Georgia, and before we even get to talking about goals, we have to understand what they value in life, right? Because if what they value is connected to their health and vitality, right? Like, I want to be there for my family. I want to be in this spot in 20 years. Like, all of those things, you're like, okay, this person's in it for the long run, right? Like, that's what they value right now. It's like their exercise program should align with that. And there's nothing wrong with the client that wants to be a high performer in any aspect. So let's talk about fitness specifically. If someone wants to be the best at fitness, let's align that training program to them being the best at fitness. But it's an easy conversation that this isn't actually going to put you in a better spot health and vitality wise. So whenever we're pushing the envelope, that it has there's a price to pay for that stuff. Right. And I'm not going to jump on this call and preach we need to all have balance and all of our clients need to have balance in life. It's like, no, very few people actually have balance in life, and that's okay. Right. But look at this as like an exercise, the way that we look at exercise. Let's make sure that our clients are periodizing their imbalance. Right. So if we're really imbalanced in this area today, maybe let's create a plan where we start to create balance over time, and we put that thought and we put that focus somewhere else in 6 months. And then over a 24-month span, we have some kind of balance, but very few people have complete balance because we all have priorities that outweigh other priorities at any given time. Does that make sense, Georgia? Sorry, that was super long-winded.
No, it absolutely does. And Faisal agrees. He says that's excellent.
Cool. Yeah, good point, Austin. Freedom on choice, right? We all have biases. I don't care who you are. We have biases. That's in the things that we want to prescribe our clients. That's the way we talk to our clients and in everything. So we have to meet our clients halfway, and we have to understand what they want, what their biases are, because it isn't a one-sided conversation, right? And I'm not saying if they choose to smoke, say cool, high five, smoke, maybe have a conversation with them on that. But if that's what their choice is, what Austin said, freedom is freedom, right? I think it's good that everyone has different biases because it brings a different point of view to the conversation. But we have to be okay with kind of flexing a little bit on our biases and letting the client win sometimes.
Guys, if you have any questions on this topic or otherwise, please pop them in the chat box now. Just make sure you're set to all panelists and attendees for us. And Carl, as people are getting their questions in, are there any other key points you want to hit on around health versus performance?
No, I think, this could have been a really short conversation. We could have jumped on and we could have said, make sure your intentions are aligned and your clients understand what their intentions are and what your intentions are for them as their coach. And we could have been out, but I think it's good to, have some commentary around that and have some challenging, questions and some challenging answers around that. But no, I think, what we want everyone to walk away with today is just understand intention, right? As a good starting point before looking at what the actual program is. And I think it is relevant today more than ever, because I know there's a lot of people having really tough conversations with their clients on it kind of is what it is right now, right? And that's where the being empathetic piece really comes into play, and not trying to fix this, because we can't fix this as coaches. I think that's it, Georgia. And then if anyone has any questions on that or wants to continue the conversation, we have a little bit of time still.
Carl, I know you work with some clients who are focused on performance, And I'm sure you've shared a little bit about how those conversations that have gone and the advice you've given on the call so far. But are there any specific moments or specific tactics you can think of to make those conversations a little bit easier per your experience?
Yeah, I think it's being honest and saying like, we don't have the answers here, right? But we're here as like our athletes or our client support system. It's like, this sucks, right? This sucks. Like, I'd rather this not be happening, but we are where we are. And I'm your coach, and this is where I'm coming into play, and this is where I'm going to support you, and this is where I can support you, right? So I think it's just having a really honest conversation on, we may not have the best answer, because we don't. Like, sitting on this call, it's like me, Jim, and Georgia don't have the best answer, right? Like, I think we have a different point of view, but we don't have the answer, because we don't know what this thing's going to turn into. And I think it's, especially with performance athletes, it's like their seasons may be done at this point. So, I don't want to dangle a carrot and be like, okay, yeah, I think, in a couple months we'll be back at this thing. It's like, hey, in reality, the season may be over. Like, we may not be competing, or we may not be training for anything in 2020. Like, the Olympics postponing should open all of our eyes to understanding that this thing is big. Because look at the ramifications of the Olympics having to postpone. Tokyo has been getting ready for this thing for 7+ years. So the financial ramifications of this thing, the logistical ramifications for this thing, if there was any other option, they would not have made this call. So let's look at us on a lower level, right? Because let's call the Olympics is like the highest level of sport and athleticism in the world. So if you're not in the Olympics, you're at a lower level. Like, what we're doing and the choices that are going to be made at lower levels have way less ramifications on the decision to cancel this thing. So the way that I'm talking to my athletes is like, the Olympics is over, right? Like, let's start thinking about 2021. If something happens in 2020, awesome, we'll be ready for it. But let's start looking past this a little bit.
I'm glad you brought up that comparison there, Carl, about the Olympics, because those have got to be some really hard conversations between coaches and Olympic hopefuls right now, who've been putting everything into that over the last 4-year training cycle and a lifetime before it. Can't even imagine what's going through their heads right now. So guys, if there's any more questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat box. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up there for today. And we will be back on tomorrow. So Carl's actually going to be chatting with Mike from Assault Fitness, and we'll be chatting about energy system training at home, especially relative to the assault bike, rower, and the equipment that they have. So it should be a really good conversation there. I do see Austin just popped a question in the chat box again.
I can hit that one.
Thanks, Jim.
And okay, so I think it was only to panelists, but essentially the question is, will people still value exercise, fitness as much coming out of this? What can be done to make sure that they still value it, government level, etc.? I don't know about you guys. I have seen some groups trying to place fitness into some lobbying efforts, actually. Now, this is mainly in the United States, but I think that you will probably see larger fitness and even the Nikes of the world attempting to get this through. So, say what you will about Nike, but the more people buying shoes, the more people who will do exercise, and is good for us. I think you'll see more and more government intervention over the next 6 to 12 months that is attempting to get people back to where they were. Not to say it's going to be perfect. The way that we need to deal with this as local business owners or coaches is we have to have continuous content now. Like, you can't not be talking to your people. You can't not be speaking to your market. People will still have the same emotions that they do today, 6 and 12 and 24 months down the road. It's just that the context of those emotions will feel a little bit different. if you've been speaking to them over that 6, 12, or 24-month period of time, they'll be much more likely to want to do fitness because you've helped them give more context to what they're already feeling. And that's one of the reasons, guys, that we're so aggressive right now in making sure we're continuing to speak to you all, is because we want to make sure that we are the most beneficial, supportive, credible coaching education program out there. It's not about selling. It's about helping you guys to make sure that you continue to go out to the world and be able to do what you want to do. That's who's going to survive. We're saying you guys should do the same things to your audiences.
Thanks for that, Jen. Carl, anything to add there?
Nope, that was good.
Last piece on that though, and this is really important. Don't expect anybody to do it for you. So make sure that you're going out there and doing this, you know, and not expecting the world to hold your hand.
Yeah, I think my only addition to that, well said, Jim, is we have to also understand that just because our ideologies are sound, and I'm not saying OPEX, I'm saying everyone on this call, we all believe our ideologies relative to exercise and nutrition are sound, and everyone should feel that way. Not everyone feels that way, right? So it's like, you know, we could sit on this call, right? We're all generally saying the same thing on this call, right? Like all of you guys in the chat box, us on the panel. It's like exercise and nutrition are extremely important, right? Like that's what everyone needs to be focused on. But that's why, you know, fitness companies have to have massive marketing engines, because it's getting people to feel the same way that you feel. Right. So that's a big thing that's in front of us. So we could all be on this call and like high-fiving each other and being like, yeah, we're going to change everyone's lives through fitness. But we have to like when Jim said, people don't expect anyone else to do the work for you. Like you have to tell your audiences that that's where you stand. This is why you stand there. And this is why it's beneficial for them to adopt your ideology. So I think we have to continue to think that like this thing isn't going to just like happen naturally, where people are like, oh yeah, like, you know, this virus is going around, I need to prioritize my health and fitness. People may not think about it. Or if they do think about it, they're not gonna know why they should reach out to you.
Thanks for that, Carl. And yeah, we are absolutely all going to be responsible for making sure people come out the other side of it healthier. And there is one thing I would ask you guys to do to help us continue to get this message into the hands of more coaches. And that is, if you could take the link from this webinar and pass it on to a friend or two who's also in the fitness industry, if you think they could benefit from it. Because the more people that hear the message, the better for us, for you guys in the fitness industry as a whole on the other side. We do really need to support each other through it. So I'll pop that in the chat box one more time. And again, we'll be on tomorrow with Carl and with Mike from Assault Fitness talking about energy system training at home. So really looking forward to that conversation tomorrow. And apologies for the technical difficulties earlier there, guys.
I think Austin was right. I think Netflix is just over streaming right now.
All right. Well, all the best, guys. Stay healthy and happy until tomorrow, okay?
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
Bye.